Hello Alice in Chains fans, and welcome to episode number 6 of the Let's Learn Facelift Guitar and Analysis series. Today we explore the primordial relationship between two seemingly polar forces, one positive and one negative, love, hate, and love, respectively. But what if these forces, seemingly polar, require each other to sustain themselves? To truly love something, you have to hate the idea of something you love being taken from you. In other words, I love to hate the idea of something I love being taken from me. And the same thing applies to the guitar. We need to answer these deeply philosophical questions in order to really understand this instrument right here. I love correct notes. I hate the wrong notes. I love to hate the wrong notes. And I love the correct notes, therefore speaking, after all of this nonsense I am spewing. And the only way to achieve this level and degree of enlightenment is through every single note, every single time change, every single chord progression, and a full, detailed musical analysis of Love, Hate, Love by Alice in Chains. Let's go. Love, Hate, Love is a slow, dirgy, and honestly pretty minimalistic track. It runs at a length of 6 minutes and 27 seconds and really only has 2 unique sections to occupy that time. Of course, however, it is not that simple. Even though we only have 2 unique sections, one of those parts creates a verse, a chorus, a guitar solo, and all sorts of great melodies up over the top, showing us how to truly do a lot with quite a little. From the quiet, clean guitar riff to the spooky modal guitar solo, oh, and let's not forget Lane Staley's absolute monster of an outro. These are all of the things that allow us to love Alice in Chains, but it's also all the things that make us hate them for being way cooler than we could ever dream to be. So with that said, it's time to put on my sunglasses, and it's also time for you to put on yours, so we can hope to achieve even a thread, a shred of Jerry Cantrell's undeniable aura with these babies on. Now, let's get into that first riff that kicks off the song. Before we even play a single note, I have to remind you to tune your guitars down to E-flat standard. It's basically the guitar equivalent of wearing sunglasses indoors, and it goes as such. Down at the bottom we have E-flat, A-flat, D-flat, G-flat, B-flat, and of course E-flat on the high end. You could also call it D-sharp, G-sharp, C-sharp, F-sharp, A-sharp, D-sharp, but that sounds kind of lame. E-flat sounds a lot cooler, so we're going to go with that. Not that it really matters, because I'm going to refer to everything as if it's in standard anyway. So an E is an E, even though it sounds like an E-flat. So now that we're tuned down, let's get into the riff. Super ominous, super dark, and super spooky. Count Dracula is also wearing sunglasses during this whole thing. Now, originally this part was played on a 12-string electric guitar. Not exactly sure what kind, but you can tell by the way that the quality of the strings ringing out, the chiminess, it definitely sounds like a 12-string electric. But I only have a 6-string electric, so we're going to play it on that for right now. And, you know, if you have a 12-string electric, be my guest and go for it. Now, it's basically 2 different chords, all right? The first of which being a D minor, I put that in quotes for a very specific reason, a D minor in straight 8th notes. Check this out. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Now that beat 4 is going to be important later on in the song, so just remember that. Our accents, right? Our first major accent is on beat 4, just prior to the next measure. All right, so we gotta understand that here. So D minor, quote unquote. Now I'm about to break it to you right now. This is not a D minor chord. It's actually a D diminished with an added ninth. D diminished add ninth, you say? Every jazz guy in the crowd just got a raging hard-on from that one. It's basically just a root note D, the flatted third, and the flatted fifth in G sharp, or A flat we'll call it, and then the E is the ninth. Alright, so that explains that chord. An extremely dissonant and unsettling chord. Could be in a horror movie, a suspense film, something by Alfred Hitchcock. You know, very high IQ suspense thriller director guy chord. That's what we're calling this here. Then we go into the next chord, which is some version of E. Alright, so I'll play that for you. We got E, F, G sharp, E, and then we come up here, A, C, and then we resolve right into G sharp and B, which is the triad. Okay, so that's a regular E chord that we finish on. But everything surrounding that is not a regular E chord. We actually have the F as being the flatted ninth. Okay, interesting. The G sharp is the third, so that's cool. So that's a sense of normalcy. The open E is the root, that's super easy. Then here, this is basically like an A minor on top of an E. So that's like a cadential 6/4. Very fancy way of saying the 4 chord on top of the root. Okay, and then right into that triad. So I'm gonna call this an E with a flatted ninth. Okay? We can even say it's E7 flat 9 because a lot of the melodic content focuses around the flatted 7th. Alright, now this is what an E7 flat 9 sounds like. Now every jazz guy in the crowd will have an erection lasting longer than 4 hours. Better call the urologist. Now that we've gotten through that clean intro, let's get into some heavy guitars, for crying out loud. Coming in right after that nice triplet snare fill. Ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da. Now we're talking. At this rate, I'm gonna have to put 2 pairs of sunglasses on. We have some very dissonant tones here. Check it out. Super heavy. Oh yeah. It's based on the same 2 chords. So these chords are mostly muted, and that's what gives it that super heavy effect. And it's also doubling the bass part, which we'll get to. But basically I have a D and an F, right, which is the minor third on top of the D chord. And then we also have it going to a major second interval here. Watch. That sounds like teeth chattering, right? A super tight interval coming back into the minor third. And that's basically representing the ninth that we were talking about there. So all is good in the hood over here. So very nice. And now this one, super dissonant. That's undeniably dissonant, okay? If you don't think that's dissonant, you got to get some help, all right? We got this. Ready? This basically represents the 5th and the flatted ninth of the E chord coming in and out of the root note, alright? So, flat 9, root flat 9, root flat ninth. That's the whole idea here. So, nothing really too crazy going on, just very dissonant. Let me play it one more time for you. I missed the chord. Oh, now I can't sing this and play it at the same time because I've never tried. Let's move on to the next part. But before we do that, let's listen to both guitars being played together. This heavy riff is the perfect counterpart to the clean riff that we had before. Quiet and loud, loud and quiet. Oh my goodness, what's going on? We're gonna start a riot. guitar's bass line underneath this also helps to reinforce the heaviness that's being presented here. So let's take a look at that. Let's listen to the very first bar on the guitar. Now let's listen to the bass. The bass harmonizes the top notes of the guitar by using the root to the flatted seventh. Here's both of those together. The move to the flat seventh gives that low range a lot more weight and helps to drag the higher notes in the guitar down with it. Let's get the next chord. Guitars first. Now bass. Here, instead of going down with the melody line, the bass comes up and adds in the flatted ninth to give it a ton of weight in the opposite direction. Listen to how the guitar goes from the flat 9 down to the root, and how the bass does the opposite. And here's what's happening there. It's actually extremely clever and very well veiled. Check this out. So the guitar is up top doing this, and the bass is down below doing this. Both going between an E and an F, but the guitar is starting on the F and the bass is starting on the E, so they're doing the opposite interaction. Boy, listen to that again. Oh my God. I'm gonna be sick listening to this. It's a riff that uses all of the same shapes that we saw in the clean intro, but here, much heavier, distortion, and with a more continuous rhythm. You gotta make sure you're really palm muting those open D strings and open E strings, because that allows the chords up top to really pop out like this. Pop, 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 boom, 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 boom. Alright, so all downstrokes, James Hetfield style. Now, all of these, like I said, are using the same shapes. The D diminished with the added ninth, actually without even the E, so it's really just a D diminished. And then the E with the flatted seventh, or the flatted ninth I should say, resolving to itself at the very end, right? And then we actually go to a power chord. Alright, and that's the easiest E that we've seen the entire time. Easy E. We all know who that is, right? Right on. Let's tune this up a little bit. Hold on. Still a little off. Let's see what we got. There we go, much better. Here we go. Alright, beautiful E5 power chord. This represents the exact same thing as this. It's all E major. That's the flat ninth, of course, but E major. And you have all these different notes that you can play within it, which I'll also explain once we get to the guitar solo. You gotta be patient with me, alright? It's definitely a strange choice for a riff, especially since Lane Staley's vocals are largely in the same range. Typically, an idea like this is meant to pop out, but somehow it lays back in the mix, and I hardly even notice it half the time when I'm listening to it, because Lane Staley's just that powerful. But usually something like this would not work in a song, but because Jerry Cantrell is super cool and wears sunglasses indoors and in the dark, he's able to do this. And to finish this chorus off, we need to go and look at the bass part real quick. Take a listen. Mike Starr is taking a scalar approach, going from the root, second, third, fifth, and up to the octave. This line essentially mimics Lane's vocal. Let's hear those two together.
You told me I'm the only one.
Now, who exactly came up with this riff first? Was it Mike Starr, or was it Lane Staley, or was it possibly Jerry? Either way, it doesn't quite matter. Whoever didn't come up with it obviously took a cue from whoever did, further solidifying this band's chemistry as being undeniably good. This bass line also adds more tension to an already tense guitar part. Check it out. The constantly changing notes continuously invert that D diminished idea, preventing us from ever feeling resolved. And speaking of not being resolved, this entire song so far has just been based off of two chords. Basically D minor 7th and E 7th. Of course with the alterations mixed in there, but that's essentially a 4-chord and a 5-chord, which by the way has no resolution. It just keeps going back and forth, with the other pretending to be a resolution, right? From the E, the D minor is pretending to be the resolution to 1, but it's not. And to the E from the D minor is pretending to be a resolution, but it's not. Alright, now basically these come from the key of A minor. Alright, so if A minor is the 1 chord, if you count up A, B, C, D, that's the 4 chord, D minor, and A, B, C, D, E, that's the 5 chord, E major. Alright, so it's just a 4 and a 5 going back and forth all the way. And this is basically happening in a minor, in A minor, in an A harmonic minor scale. Alright, which sounds like this. It's basically an A minor scale with a raised 7th scale degree. Very, very tense when you just hold that major 7th. Very, very nice. But it's basically a 4 and a 5 progression, but never goes back to 1. Who would have thunk it? The next part of the song is, of course, Jerry Cantrell's great guitar solo. But before we do that, we have to take a look at the rhythm guitar and see what it's doing. It sounds remarkably close to how the chorus section sounds. That's because it's based off of that idea. And the bass this time is just hitting half notes, so much less frequently than in the chorus part with those 8th notes. Drums are pretty much the same, nice half-time kind of groove, very infrequent snare drum, and this guitar part adding in some reinforcement on the bottom with some nice beefy and hefty power chords. And here it is, ready? Still outlining the D minor to the E even after all this time. These are basically just all passing notes, but you can consider this the D. Alright, doesn't matter that it's moving, it's still outlining all of the notes of a D minor, okay? And it just sounds super evil, and it adds just the right amount of beef to the stroganoff. Let's get into the actual guitar solo. The first lick extends to the first pass of the D minor and E chord, and it explicitly details the chord structure. I will explain in a little bit. Check this out, ready? Start on the 5th fret of the A string. Very, very cool sounding lick. And it basically doesn't use any kind of pentatonic stuff at all. It's not bluesy in the least. It's actually very modal and very melodic when it comes to these two chords. Now, starting up on the root of the D minor like this. Plenty of vibrato, alright? Articulation is going to be super important in this. And then we come up a full step. a half step bend, plenty of vibrato as well, and picking both of those notes. Ready? Alright, so that'll take us to that point. And then we have these mutes, alright? It's basically like a hammer-on like this, and then mute, mute. Let me play that articulation again, watch. Making our way slowly down to the 2nd fret of the A string, which is the note B, which is the 5th of the E major chord. Alright, so when we hit that note, we do a tiny little bit of a bluesy thing there, but it doesn't last very long because we go right to this arpeggio shape, like this. And you want to actually hold that out as its own chord. Alright, you can either use these 2 fingers or 3 fingers like that, but doesn't matter as long as you get those notes out and you have them ringing out with the E chord. Right? So, listen. And you have the E, the low E ringing out for the first couple notes, and then you gotta mute it in between. Watch. To then let those high notes scream a little bit, and of course adding tons of vibrato in the process. Here's that whole lick one more time again. Here we go. Very cool. And as we move through this, be sure to take heed of how closely Jerry Cantrell follows these chords melodically. Alright? This shows a level of sophistication that goes quite a ways beyond some of his contemporaries, so please take notice of this. And of course, after I'm done saying he doesn't play much blues, he explicitly plays a stereotypical blues line right here. It sounds like this. Very cool, very Jerry Cantrell, and very much awesome, alright? So, check this out. We basically have... Those are 2 separate sets of bends and pull-offs. And then coming down to the root note. Essentially, we're just going down the E minor pentatonic scale with this, alright? And then capping it off with this little hammer-on into a double stop. Now, all of these notes represent E minor 7th, okay? So, that's the flatted 7th, that's the 5th, that's the 4th, that's the flatted 3rd, that's the root, and the flat 7th down here. And then that train sounding chord sounds like a moving train or a train horn. It's just a G and a B. That's the flat 3rd and the 5th of an E minor. Alright, so nothing crazy. Let me play it one more time. Ready? You gotta make sure you hit them. Boom, fluently, each one back to back, no stopping. If I see any stopping, I'm going to take these sunglasses off and I'm going to beam this death ray from my eyeballs right into your ears. That E minor on top of the D creates some pretty cool color tones. We have a root, that's not really that cool, but we have a 6, we got a 5th, that's not that cool, we got a 4th, not that cool, but then we have a 9, alright, so we got 6s, and we got 9s. We got a 6, and we got a 9, we got a 69, that real dirty shit right there. And who can forget that there's a big old D right in the middle of that? What kind of 69 would be complete without a big old D extending from the root? You tell me. Next lick. Alright, so this is where we really start to embrace that E Phrygian dominant type of idea, alright, that we saw Lane Staley singing in earlier on, and this is also what the harmony is indicative of too, okay, those guitar chords we saw earlier. But basically we're going like this. So once again, articulation is super important. We have the A going down to the G sharp, that's a sus4 resolution on the E, and then we go, that's the 7th to the 8th fret, that's E to F, that's the root and the flatted 9th. Well, we had an E7 with a flat 9th the entire song so far. Nothing crazy here. Then we kind of dip down to the 8th fret here, this is the C. That's just part of the scale, coming back up. And of course, course, resolving to the root note. I noticed Jerry Cantrell really likes the root note quite a bit, alright? So, very, very cool sounding idea. Now the E Phrygian dominant scale comes from the key of A harmonic minor. Now I explained this briefly before, but I didn't really get into too much detail. So here, I'm going to show you how to play this E harmonic minor scale, or not E harmonic minor, E Phrygian dominant scale, okay? So this is the fifth mode of the A harmonic minor scale, okay? So we have this, watch. E, F, G sharp as the major third, A, B, C, D, and E. Alright, so that's the root, flat 2, that's your Phrygian. Okay, the flat 2 is always the Phrygian. Going up to the major third, alright? Usually a Phrygian proper is a minor third. But here we have it going to the major third because it keeps that E dominant, alright? There's the fourth, the fifth, flatted sixth, flatted seventh, and the root. Alright, so it's basically, it's an E minor scale with a flatted 2 and a major third. Alright, so check that out. A minor scale with a major third. That doesn't make any sense. I know it doesn't make sense, but hey, sometimes I help you, sometimes I'm of no help at all. But you know what? At least I can play an E Phrygian dominant scale for your listening pleasure. No 69s here. We don't need them. Now let's get both of those previous licks back to back because it goes through both of the chords. Here, I'll start with the E blues lick. Watch. Following that, we continue even further into this E Phrygian dominant idea with quite possibly my favorite lick from this solo. Oh yeah, absolutely love the sound of that. It's all the notes we just went over. E, F natural, G sharp, A, B, skipping all the way up to the root, kind of ping-ponging back and forth, and then hitting a D natural, which is the flatted 7th, alright? So this is E7 with a flatted 9th. And it has a very Middle Eastern flair to it. Almost sounds like we're locked in the middle of the desert. We're locked in the middle of the desert. Go figure. I don't know how you make that work. There's a sand door with a giant lock made of sand, with a key that's made of sand. But every time you try to touch it, it just dissolves in your hand. Alright, so that's what sand does. It turns into little grains and it falls to the ground, just like an hourglass perceiving time that you're not able to perceive. So here we go. Let's go back into this. Ready? Very nice. And plenty of vibrato on that final note as well. Now, coming into the next part, we have this very cool little E sus4 type of idea going on. We have more notes in the E Phrygian dominant scale. This is the 5, flat 6, flat 7, the 3rd to the 4th. That's the first iteration of the sus4. And then we have this. We're basically hitting a D and an A. That is the flat 7th and the sus4 of the E chord, resolving into a G sharp. But that resolution is pretty rocky because it has a tritone in it, alright? That's the most evil sound in music, and I've detailed that on this channel before, but yeah. Who knew that a resolution could have such a demonic sound to it? Alright, so one more time. The next lick only encapsulates the D minor chord, and it goes like this. Very, very cool sounding. It basically outlines a D and 9, alright? Or a stacked 5th power chord. Because look, this is like a mega power chord. We have a power chord here with a D and an A, and we also have an A and an E on top of that. So when you play it all together, it sounds like this, alright? It's a pretty common usage of that chord, you know, but here it's being outlined in just a solo format. So we have with those open D and A strings in the middle. Alright, so we got full step bends. That's the D coming up to an E, root to the second. Then we have the open A, that's the fifth of the chord. Perfect, alright? And then, that's basically the A coming up to a B. That's actually a Dorian motion. That's the first one that we saw so far, but it's another whole step bend. Keeps it in key, and the D, of course, is the root. And then we land right on that ninth, alright, which is pretty cool. And then we have our first example of a legato run by Mr. Cantrell. Check it out. You basically only want to pick one time, and then let the fingers, the left-hand fingers, take care of the rest. And you want to make sure you have enough finger strength going on there. Ready? Alright, don't want to pluck until the very last one. First and last. Very cool sound, and we're going to see a lot more examples of that as we go through Jerry Cantrell's body of work. He likes to do those little fast blips of legato runs when you least expect it. Cue up Nutshell if you don't believe me. But here, very, 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 very cool. I didn't even follow my own advice on that one. There you go. Okay, anyway, let's get that whole thing one more time. Ready? Watch this. Pretty cool. And now to cap off the lick portion of the program, we have our final iteration of the E Phrygian dominant. Check this out. Ready? That's basically it. Instead of descending, we're ascending. Alright? And coming to that final half-step bend resolution into that B natural, which is the fifth of the E chord. So perfectly harmonic in this situation. Alright, one more time. Be sure to follow that articulation as well. Lots of mutes in the perfect possible spots for this. Alright? And let's get those final two licks back to back once more. Both the D minor and the E chords. Here we go. Following all of those licks, we have a very melodic section with tons of space. At this point, the chords are being held out for 2 full bars each. Right? And all the while, we have melodic notes on top, continuing from the solo section, just before that final dive bomb that takes us into the bridge. So let's take a listen to that little bit that happens in the end. Each of those downbeats features a very specific harmony note that occurs on top of the chord. The first is A, which is the fifth of the D minor chord. Then we have one of these. That's a sus4 to the third resolution, just like we've seen. Then go down here. That's the root to the flat 2 of the E chord. Alright, so that's now on the E. Then we got to do a little hammer right to the root of the D. Doesn't get any easier than that. Then of course we have this. A big old 10th fret bend followed by a big old dive bomb down to the bowels and the pits of hell. Alright? That's Jerry Cantrell's specialty right there. Let me play this one more time for you. So, 5th of the D minor. Then going into sus4, flat 9, then of course, and then a big old dive bomb coming on down. And here's a real quick chord melody of that whole last section. Check it out. cool. Let's get the entire solo from front to back. Ready? Here we go. Melodic bit. We're in the desert. Last and final dive bomb, and not really. We're going to get into that a little bit sooner here. An absolutely incredible guitar solo by Mr. Jerry Cantrell. Super colorful, it's very eccentric, modal, melodic, harmonic. It's even got a little bit of blues snuck in there. He just can't help himself now, can he? So it just goes to show you the level of sophistication that comes from Mr. Cantrell and really adds to the overall atmosphere of Alice in Chains. Now, to be able to solo on top of those two chords is no easy feat. You have to understand how the modes work and how and what different chord and scale shapes you got to use all the while. And this E Phrygian dominant mode is one extreme example of that. Now, you know, it's an incredible solo. It's one of my favorites, and hopefully you enjoy it too, and hopefully you enjoyed learning it if you got to the end there. So kudos to you if you did. But we still have more to go on this song, so let's continue on. We finally break the monotony of the two-chord progression that we've had for the last 4 minutes in favor of a 4-chord progression, kind of. Let's check it out. I'll play it slow first. On to go 4 more times essentially. Now, all that's really happening here are power chords, all right, but moving in a very specific way and with some higher arpeggios and open strings on the top. Now, the first couple chords, that's G, A to E. Now, I'm going to say that this is kind of like a G, or like a G6 chord, all right? If we take the open B and E string into account, basically get a G6, all right? That could be seen as the flat 3 chord or an inverted 1 chord, a 1-6. So we can actually see all this right here as an E minor that's inverted with the flat 3rd on the bottom. So just something to think about there. But that immediately goes to this F sharp. Now, detailing a lot of Dream Theater stuff on this channel, this is known as the Metropolis chord. Now, what the heck is this doing in an Alice in Chains song? Well, there's a lot of other Alice in Chains songs that do this as well. So maybe it's not the Metropolis chord, maybe it's the Rooster chord, right? Alright, that's the same type of sound, that open E and B. It basically creates this F sharp with an 11th and a flatted 7th on it, alright? Or F sharp 7 with an added 11th. A really, really cool sound. It's like a sus4, but it also has the 3rd in it. An awesome sound, and, you know, really defining of the 90s. A lot of bands were using those chords, let me tell you. And it's kind of funny because it's based on a Rush chord, you know? It's based on the chord in Limelight, Right. Now go listen to Limelight and tell me that that's not what's going on. But yeah, so all of this coming from a 70s prog rock nerd band. Unbelievable. So it's honestly not really that cool, but that's okay. I love Rush, by the way. I'm just being a little facetious here, alright? I'm being tongue-in-cheeky. Don't get upset if your favorite band is Rush and I'm making fun of it, alright? So we gotta hit that F sharp. And then we have to basically hit that arpeggio right in there as well. And then we gotta do this. Watch. We gotta use all of those notes to encircle the F natural. Wow, okay, so that kind of changes the vibe of that F sharp chord. And by the way, that F sharp chord is not really a 2 chord like we think it would be. It's actually a 5 of a 5, which would ordinarily go to a 1, but here we don't go to either. We just hit the 5 of the 5 chord, which is the F sharp, and then encircle, which means play every other note but the F surrounding the F. So notice, the F sharp is a half step above the F, the G is a whole step, and the E is a half step underneath the F. Alright? And then we hit very, very smoothly into what is known as a flat 2 chord. This is the F with a major 7 and a sharp 11th. Very, very colorful chord. It's a Lydian chord, but it's happening on the flat 2, which is more of a Phrygian idea, which we've seen Phrygian the entire song, okay? It's just not a Phrygian dominant at this point of the juncture, okay? So, and it's basically a flat 2 Neapolitan chord, which goes right to 1, right? Half-step resolutions always work. A little bit of rhythm, and then flat 7. So, hey, continuing the D to E, even into the outro. That's kind of cool. Now make sure you have the open E on the bottom of that high E power chord here, because that makes up the sound pretty nicely, alright? It really tries to fill it in on the bottom there, as well as having those notes on the top. So here, let's get that one more time. Watch, ready? This is like a G or an inverted E to an F sharp, 5 of 5, encircle the F, flat 2, resolve to the 1, open E on the bottom, flat 7, keeping the D in our memories from before. Pretty cool. Now that riff goes a total of 4 times through, so it's a pretty long section. But at the end of the second time, we have this little blues lick that happens. Check it out, ready? I'll play the whole thing, watch. Yeah. All the same. It's almost like the descending blues line in Man in the Box has made its triumphant return in a wholly different song, in a whole nother different song. So it's basically just going like this. And then right back into the riff as if nothing happened. It's just a little thing to, I guess, break up the monotony and also introduce another layer. But before we introduce that layer, I'm sorry folks, I'm all over the place here. Let me show you another layer that comes in. A little more of a subtle one, if you will. Now, as you can tell, that clean guitar only comes in to color in the arpeggios with an extra note at the end there. Now, while that one just colors in the chord progression to make it sound a little more full and a little more colorful, these next 2 layers are pretty much explicit harmonies. I'm actually going to show you one of them first on top of that heavy rhythm. Check it out. it's almost identical to the riff we've been playing, but we just have some different notes we're hitting. Harmonies of the chords that are being played underneath. Check it out, ready? It's almost like a B minor pentatonic type of thing, but really we're on the flat 7th and the 5th of an E. Alright, so check that out, ready? 4th fret, which is a C sharp. Interesting, let's do the next one. Going to an A, also interesting. Then we have this. That fades out. That's basically just an E minor pentatonic, nothing to see there. Now, the first note is harmonizing the F sharp chord. Check this out. If I play an F sharp underneath that, it's the 5th. It's basically creating a power chord harmony. But as a single note. Single notes are very, very, very effective in terms of this sound, alright? Now the A harmonizes with the F, alright, which sounds awesome, by the way. Here, check this out. That's almost like Metallica, in a way. Reminds me of something off of Master of Puppets. That sort of harmony. Super low, but super colorful as well. And when you play it as a single note, it sounds freaking awesome. Or rewind it if you want to hear it again. Well, you will hear it again, but in a slightly different context. But here it is, ready? Tiny little vibrato as well. Alright, so nothing else going on there. Very nice. Now we have to hit the 4th and final layer of this giant layer cake of Jerry Cantrell's beautiful guitar harmonies. This one's a little more of a coloring agent as well, but it's a lead guitar. Very similar to the solo tone, but kind of cast in the background. It's simply 2 bends, alright? But this is very indicative of Jerry Cantrell's style here. It's almost like a ghoul. Or a ghost coming to steal your sunglasses for the 4th and final time. And I stole my own sunglasses. They're not going to come back on because guess what? I lost my cool card. I've made too many corny jokes in this video so far to deserve to wear sunglasses inside. So here we go. We're going to play these 2 bends. The first one's just a half step bend. No, it's a whole step bend. I'm an idiot. Whole step bend. Alright? Here we go. It's just the note E bending to an F sharp. And don't do any vibrato either. I'm playing this entire song wrong. Don't even listen to me anymore. Just kidding. Listen to every word I say. Check it out. No vibrato, whole step bend, and stopping before the next little rhythmic part happens, okay? That's the flat 7th to the root of the F sharp chord. Now, the next one is just sort of a half step bend being released again. This one's the spookiest of them all. The half step bends are always so spooky. It almost reminds me of a ghost taking my sunglasses away, just like I did to myself. Right? But it's basically a major 7th on top of the F sharp. So, on top of the F, I mean. So the F sharp has the F sharp going to E to F sharp. So that's the whole step bend. The F to the E is a major 7th. Alright, so 2 very distinct sounds. And then here's the major 7th. Sounds really nice and super colorful, just like I've been saying the entire video. A very spooky technique that we're going to hear a lot more of in the future. Let's hear all 4 of those layers being played together. Now, doesn't that just sound awesome? And freaking huge, too. Alright, just another example of Jerry Cantrell layering multiple guitars on top of each other and not crowding it too much either, alright? There's never any superfluous bullshit going on here. It's all good in the hood when it comes to Jerry Cantrell. Nothing extra, just everything that's perfectly necessary, alright? All the overdubs are tasteful, magnifique, alright? As the French would say magnifique. Now, I forgot to mention one critical layer, and that is the vocal. So we're going to take a little bit of a look at that. Let's go. Let's take a listen to the part. The first thing that you'll notice is that the vocals mimic the riff, which is quite unusual and wouldn't ordinarily work in most other circumstances, but here we are being proven otherwise. The second thing to mention is the range. It is quite high, and belting out a B flat in full chest voice is no easy feat. The third thing to point out is that the common thread between all of the chords is an E blues environment. Layne also seems to hit the flat seventh as the final note of the big idea.
Love, hate, love.
Now the E minor chord can work well with all three of the chords in that progression, whether it's the G or the G6, which is basically an E minor, so that's self-explanatory. The F sharp is just kind of like a sus type of environment, right? Sounds good. And it especially sounds good on the F. That's because it creates a Lydian environment, okay? So if I play a lot of these notes on top of F, here's an E minor pentatonic scale. And a lot of Layne Staley's lines are very much blues oriented, all right? Using a lot of those very colorful notes in the E minor pentatonic scale. Alright, now after all of that incredible work done by the Alice in Chains boys, we still have one little section left at the ending here, which I'm going to call the actual outro. All that stuff before is just a fake out ending. Alright, especially that big chord that ends it with Layne Staley singing that very last dropping note. We think the song is over, but it's actually not. It's a fake out. And it's got that same long break, but this time there's no counting off or crescendo with the crash cymbal. It's just dead silent in the drum department, but in the guitar department we have these crazy weasels trying to get down your chimney and steal all your Christmas presents from Santa Claus. Alright? Now that's not cool. But in order to make that sound, just basically take your pick, go like this, against that, and you create the sort of Herman Lee arcade sound. Alright, Ira Bruce, here we go. Boom. Can you believe that? All that crazy stuff going on there. And basically create a whirlwind of sound with your pick scraping against the strings. It's like a runway, right? Or a plane descending into absolute oblivion, okay? Now, essentially what comes in after the fact is just the same riff that we saw, all right? Nothing really too special, but it's a lot slower. Just like this. Really exaggerated. And we also have a little bit of a difference on that arpeggio as well. Check out that F. come back around to do the arpeggio twice, all right, to finish off the measure. The clean guitar also does this, all right? Then we just end it exactly the same. But wait, there's more. You thought the song was over. That was the second fake out ending, folks. We actually have another clean guitar that comes in and just plays this eerie intro riff as the true outro of the song. We have to be very quiet. The ghosts are coming in, stealing pair of sunglasses that we have. I can see my sunglasses over there that were violently thrown across the room by a ghost. We have to let this fade out into the distance. The scary man, Ghost Boy, is in the refrigerator, about to come out and melt all of our butter on the floor. He's gonna stick your head in the microwave while you're sleeping. What a tragic night for a curse. Alright everybody, that is going to do it. Thanks so much for coming along this journey of love, hate, love. The two polar opposite emotions that encapsulate the entirety of human existence. Now, if you'd like to further support the channel, you like what you see, please leave a comment, right? Leave a like. Try to get other people to watch these videos too. You know, they take a lot of time, take a lot of work, so anytime people watch and express their gratitude really means a lot to me. You could also go to my Patreon page or my Subscribe Star, where you can pledge certain amounts per month. I have different perks for different levels. You can also leave a tip on the PayPal. You know, that's a cool thing to do. Just, hey, RomanOva, I love your stuff. Leave a tip. I'm going to leave a tip. That's a good thing. Beautiful thing to do. Yeah, any amount helps, you know. I could use all the support I need to keep doing this, you know. But you guys motivate me all the time, so it's absolutely unbelievable. You know, it's great stuff. You guys are great. The best people on the planet on this channel. Yeah, I mean, you can also reach out to me personally through my website, www.romanovamusic.com, and you can take lessons with me. I offer private instruction if you're looking for that. We can go over all sorts of stuff, theory, chords, technique. You know, we could go even deeper into this song if you want. Who knows? The world is our oyster. So that's about it, folks. I will see you around on the next video, and until then, have a good night, have a good day, and peace out. Peace be with you, my brothers and sisters.